Frameworks. A lot of times when people think about strategy, they immediately think about frameworks. And there are thousands of frameworks out there in the business world for different types of strategies you need to do, whether they're corporate, business, functional, departmental, whatever. If there's a problem, there seems to be a framework out there about it. And you can actually head over to Medium and check out their list of top 100 frameworks, which is sourced from a company that's not sponsoring us and we're not associated with, named Levy, and they have thousands of frameworks there. So frameworks can be a little bit dangerous if we just pull them off the shelf. But the good news is for those of us dealing primarily in business strategy, and arguably you could use this for corporate strategy as well, today's authors have laid out a very clear, direct, and user-friendly framework that you can apply to various situations. And they list out all the pitfalls, all the warning signs, and all the dangers along the way of misapplying the framework. And it's all in the name of helping you get to your goal. So let's go ahead and check out Playing to Win. Before we get into it, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Patrick Norton. I'm a co-founder of StratThink, and I've been doing strategy for about 10 years now. I started off in consulting at Bain & Company and then moved into other strategy and strategically focused roles in companies here in the Atlanta area. And if you allow me just a little bit more grace before I jump into the book review, I want to talk about why StratThink is even doing book reviews. Well, for one thing, we have an educational mission here. We want to make the topic more democratized and more approachable so that people can make better strategic decisions en masse using the tools and approaches that you learn about here. We also want to give you a sense of what it'd be like to work with us. So this is a nice, safe way to talk about some strategic concepts before you even engage. And we want to give you an opportunity to interact with us even before getting to that point. So you can comment below on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you find this video, and we'll try to talk back with you. But due to the perceptions and the dynamics of the industry, I want to also explain what it's not. This is not StratThink saying, hey, all we're going to do is pull a framework off the shelf and apply it to your problem and hand you back a rote answer. No, everything that we do is bespoke, it's thought through, it's meant to give you a solution that works for you and moves you forward. And we also don't recommend you doing that for yourself either. So we're doing these book reviews for a myriad of reasons, but one of those reasons is not to encourage you just to apply frameworks blindly, just like they talk about in the book today. For this book review, we have something a little bit interesting. We have actually co-authors this time around. So it's going to take a little bit longer to go over their backgrounds, but their backgrounds are both very impressive and it qualifies them to write the book. The book is written by A.G. Lafley, a former Procter Gamble CEO, and Roger L. Martin, a former dean of the Rotman School of Management, who together between 2000 and 2009 led Procter Gamble to new heights. Let's start with A.G. Lafley. Lafley graduated from Hamilton College, served in the U.S. Navy, and graduated from Harvard Business School. He joined Procter Gamble right after a business school and rose to the ranks to become chairman and CEO. He stayed in that role until 2010 and then actually did a second stint as chairman and CEO from 2013 to 2015. He became executive chairman after 2015 and retired in 2016 and is the founding CEO of Bay Park Conservancy. Let's move on to Roger L. Martin. He graduated from Harvard undergrad and Harvard Business School and then joined the Canada Consulting Group as a strategy consultant before moving over to Monitor, which I believe is part of Deloitte now. He then became dean of the Rotman School of Management, which is in Toronto, and served in that capacity from 1998 to 2013, and retired in 2019 after doing some more teaching there after he wasn't dean. He then founded the Roger L. Martin Incorporated and has authored many, many other books, along with many other co-authors, and has advised Lego, Ford, and many other huge companies as a strategy consultant. And with their powers combined, they led Procter & Gamble to one of the best runs in the company's history between 2000 and 2009. Now, they have a bunch of financial metrics in the book that you could look at, like stock price and free cash flow, to justify their business success during this time. But they also have a scorecard that's tied directly to the strategic choices because, as Martin says in the book, you can't always go on stock price and free cash flow as an indicator of strategic success. So looking on the visual here, core growth at a huge company, double digits. An adjacent move into beauty, also strong double digits. And then expanding into emerging markets also produced double digit growth. They have many other metrics behind this in Appendix A that shows how their strategic choices paid off. But to me, this shows just how qualified these two authors are to specifically talk about how they created and generated this run at Procter and Gamble through strategy. And now that we know a little bit more about the authors and their historic run at Procter and Gamble, let's talk about the book itself. Playing to Win: How Strategy Really Works was written in 2013, and the book has three goals. It lays out the playing to win framework, the strategy logic flow, and the strategic choice structuring process framework. It sets the right mindset and process for how to implement and discuss this framework at work and make sure you get the results you need from it. And it covers all the pitfalls of the framework and provides really good warnings about how to get the most out of the framework. Now we're going to move into the book summary, where we're going to go over the major themes of the book. If I was to just go through this particular book chapter by chapter and lay it out for you, I'd basically be reading the book because it is about a framework and how to use it at the end of the day. So we're going to focus on the major themes and give you a feel for what it's like to read this. So the first thing that the authors do, and the first major theme that we're going to talk about, is they really set that strategy mindset. And they use it to set the tone for the book because when you're applying frameworks, you can get lost in details. You can be too rote. You might be inflexible, and you kind of miss solving the real problem. So having that strategy mindset in mind the whole time that you're using a framework or a mixture of frameworks is key. And the authors start the book with this, and they start with a really good quote about what strategy is. As you can see on the visual, the quote says, "Strategy is an integrated set of choices that uniquely positions the firm in its industry so as to create sustainable advantage and superior value relative to competition." This quote is in chapter 1, which is titled, "What is Strategy?" And it's the perfect way to start a book that's about multiple frameworks, because you still have to get to the kind of soul of the problem in order to solve the problem. And the authors never let you forget that. There's all sorts of things in the books like that they call strategy traps, that they call signs of winning strategy, that they call do's and don'ts, to make sure that you're not oversimplifying the framework as you go along. The book also doesn't hold back on taking you through key economic and competitive concepts that really flesh out your thinking and make what we call that logical narrative between your mission and vision, your goals and objectives, and your tactics really come to life to make strategy work. And another thing that I really appreciated about the book is its perspective on winning. When you talk about winning in business, it almost always starts with money. How much money are we going to make? When are we going to make the money? And strategists don't really totally think like that. At least we aren't supposed to be thinking like that. And that could be a whole debate. And maybe I just took a side on that debate on accident. But it doesn't really start with money. It starts with your customers and doing right by your consumers. And it starts with achieving a winnable, sustainable, winnable position and holding it. And then you can iterate from there if you want to move outwards. And I kind of think of, and I don't know what everybody thinks about Sumner Redstone. I haven't looked into his legacy at all, but I remember him saying a quote in a documentary once about winning and winning in business. And it kind of goes like, yeah, of course, if you win big in business, money will follow. But the point is to win. It's to win, win, win all the time, not some of the time, every time. And I think that ethos kind of paired with that definition works well together. Just for your general view, maybe I've slipped into editorializing here a little bit, because taking a broader scope about winning, having do's and don'ts and traps and all that stuff about winning is a great start for the book. And it's a great way for you to go through using the rest of the frameworks in ways that will actually benefit you and create something that's sustainable and lasting. The next big theme of the book is the word of the day: frameworks. There's 3 of them in the book. We're going to go over one because I just don't want to give away everything. But as I already mentioned in describing the book, there's the strategic logic flow, which talks a lot about those economic concepts and those business concepts that are part of getting into the strategy mindset. And then there's a whole process, which I'll abbreviate here to SCSP, that he goes through that talks about how to just make a strategic decision. And it's a framework that he's iterated on quite a bit, and we'll go into that in a little bit later. And this is his second iteration of it. So let's jump into the first framework, and probably the most famous framework from this book. What's on the screen right now is the Playing to Win framework. It is the most enduring framework from the book. It is a framework that Martin has deployed in various companies. It's a framework that I've used either explicitly or in the background of problems, sometimes in conjunction with other frameworks to get to the bottom of a problem that I'm working on. And for me, and in my opinion, it's the most helpful in business unit strategy. But as I mentioned before, the authors argue that it can cascade throughout the organization. So you can probably think of ways to apply this to any strategy problem that you're facing. It starts with a winning aspiration and making sure that you have a specific goal for where you want to go into the marketplace to establish position. And then it moves to where to play, which is about what products you're going to sell, what geographies you're going to be in, what consumers you're going to compete for. All those types of questions go in that bucket. And then it's how to win. How are we going to communicate to the market our value proposition? What is our competitive advantage? And where to play and how to win is what the book calls the heart of strategy. And it iterates on each other. And it also iterates up to the winning aspiration, because when you're doing an actual project, you're kind of working on all three of those at once, and they all inform each other. And then it goes down to the core capabilities, what's important for the company to be able to do to enact those where to play and how to win choices and chasing the winning aspiration. And then it goes into the management systems, which is how do you structure the company so that it tracks the right things, encourages the right behaviors to get to execution. The Playing to Win framework is a good and comprehensive framework about creating strategy and getting to execution. But I do want to join the author in their principal caution about using this, which is just stopping at a certain point. Some people do the winning aspiration, call it strategy, and just stop. Some people do where to play and how to win, call it a strategy, and just stop. But if you go back to the quote, strategy is an integrated set of choices that are supposed to work together up and down that framework. So the authors caution it at every chapter, I think, to not stop at a certain point and get through the whole thing. And I join them in that caution if you're going to use this framework. Another big theme of the book is regular and creative strategy discussion, which is what they use this framework to ultimately inspire in their company. They really stress, and we stress here just to editorialize a bit, that strategy is not a set and forget kind of thing. You don't just come up with strategies anymore, let them run out for 10 years, and then do another strategy. Technology moves too fast, capital markets move too fast, trends move too fast for you to just come up with a strategy one year and revisit it years from now. You always need to be working on it and kind of assessing it as you go along. And the authors did this at Procter Gamble by adjusting their business review process. I think it was an annual business review process, but I'm not sure. But their goal was to move it from, as they described it, corporate theater at its best to something that focused more on assertive inquiry. And I think that's a great way to put it. I think we've all been there where executives are going to look over your business. So you just put your best version of your biggest case, your biggest numbers, your most optimistic rationale on a slide, hope that nobody hunts and pecks at it too much, and then you just kind of go back to business as usual. When things might be really going on in the world or in the company that need to be addressed to enable you to your goals. This assertive inquiry tone, or the creative tension I've seen it described in other areas, is really what you're looking for in your strategy conversation, because you can get to different ideas and different thoughts about how to attack a market or adjust your strategy or implement new strategy in order to get to your goals and find a sustainable position in the marketplace. And they use this framework throughout Procter & Gamble to do that for, and keep in mind, this is a company that has a ton of brands, for every brand, every business line to get in sync and to make sure that they're getting the best out of each market decision. So it's a theme of the book, and it's a theme of the book that we endorse and that we like about the book. And not just because we're consultants and we love the idea of having a steady stream of business, but it's truly what's best nowadays. We really can't just make strategies and forget about it. It's an iterative process that's always changing and always adjusting for new risks and mitigations. The last major theme of the book that I want to talk about is decisions and choices. Strategy is all about decisions and choices and action. And the writers of the book never shy away from this. And the way that they even talk about pitfalls and mistakes that you can make in decision making, and certainly when he's talking about his SCSP framework in the book, you can tell that not only have they made decisions and choices that they've had to stand by and defend, but also have been tempted by every way not to make a decision or choice out there. And of course, working at an organization like P&G, they must have seen the breadth of strategic choices and shortcuts that you can take to avoid big strategic decisions, just all the way around and in a bunch of different products and brands. And clearly have had experience with avoiding those pitfalls themselves, and they put it in the book for us to read. One of those pitfalls is myopia, and it's a pitfall that we can all fall into, where you're just so honed in on the world working out a certain way, or your particular worldview working out a certain way, that you forget about the other options on the table, or you forget to look at yourself differently, or you forget to take an outside in view. Um, and myopia only works against you and works against your decision making. I think they call out specifically marketing myopia in the book, but there's all different kinds of myopia that you have to be looking out for in your decision making to make sure that you're making the best choices. Not to gush, but one of my favorite things in the book is about participation strategies, because participation strategies are a waste of money. I will endorse that concept or that statement of theirs all the way around. If you are in a market not to win, and not to win just in terms of making money, like we discussed before, but to secure a position, stay in a market for a long time, and compete for consumers in that market, then what are you doing there? It'd be better to put the money in the S&P 500. So we definitely don't do participation strategies here, and participation strategies at the end of the day just avoid decisions and choices. So can endorse it, and I'm glad the book doesn't endorse it. Another way that people avoid decision and choices sometimes are through avoiding picking a consumer segment. We just sell to everybody. Everybody's important. We just got to sell to everybody. You're going to have to make at least choices about who you're going to sell to first, even if in later iterations of your strategy, your ambitions allow you to serve multiple segments. At some point, you have to make a decision about consumer segments that are the most important to you and the most valuable to you. And then also, they point out giving into inertia. Just these businesses are large animals sometimes, and they just will not move. It's been described to me sometimes like how steering a big aircraft carrier or a big battleship can take forever to turn, and you can just give up midterm because of what the company is putting out as what they won't do or what they won't ever do. And they urge the reader to push through all that to once again get to the best decision and choices. So clearly, and I may have mentioned this before, but I want to echo it again if I did. Clearly, Lafley and Martin have been tempted by all these decision shortcuts and all these traps that lead to subpar decisions, and have found ways to deal with it. And the framework gives you good ways to deal with it if, again, once again, if it's used correctly. So those are the major themes of the book. Let's move on to the critical review. For every StratThink review, we ask ourselves the same four questions. One, is it a strategy book? Two, what are some of the limitations of this book? Three, is the book well written / structured? Four, will this book help me if I'm new to strategy or trying to do a strategy project at work? So first, is it a strategy book? I'm not going to belabor it. Easy, yes. This book is totally about the logical narrative between your mission and vision, your goals and objectives, and your tactics, and how to enhance that narrative and how to make it the best narrative that it can be. It's a strategy book all day long. What are some of the limitations of the book? I'm going to start this a little bit differently because I want to highlight a limitation you would expect, but not one that I totally saw manifested in this book, which is a big self-serving bias. I don't ever get the sense from this book that Lafley and Martin just put the Superman S on their chest and make them sound like they're the sole saviors of the company. However, if you read that in there, I wouldn't fault you. I would just kind of ask for examples and kind of get some interaction on it. I didn't totally see it in there, so I don't see it as a limitation, but I would think anyone watching this would think, oh yeah, the chairman and the CEO and their top consultant are just aggrandizing themselves for 200 plus pages. So why am I reading this? It doesn't really totally happen. Not for me. The main limitation that I see in the book is that you have to be Lafley and Martin to do this. You have to be chairman and CEO and the top consultant, top strategy consultant in your company in order to pull this whole thing off. Not everybody who reads this book is going to be able to change the business review process or to tell leaders of business divisions to go try again in making strategy and be able to put that assertive inquiry out there. It is something that is kind of top down. So you're going to have to think through your own on how to work on this from the middle out or the bottom up, whichever you're coming from your company that you want to use this framework for to improve strategy. Another limitation on this is that they never really stopped working on it, which is not a surprise, right? It came out in 2013, but the SCSP framework, the strategic choice framework in the book, Martin has been iterating it. And in fact, as I mentioned before, it was the second iteration and that made it into the book. And he is now on his fifth iteration of the book. Furthermore, at the time of this filming, this isn't out yet. They have another version of Playing to Win coming out in September of 2025. I don't know yet if I'm going to read it and try to review it or try to see what the differences are. I will let you know about that. But it just shows that even the framework in the book requires refinement and application to your situation, which they don't hold back on telling you that that's going to be the case. So I guess just look out for all that when you're using it, and don't be afraid to use your judgment to change it. As I mentioned earlier, this is a small limitation. They talk about how this framework can cascade throughout the organization. And I mentioned how I typically think of this as a business unit strategy framework. I think if you, going back to a prior limitation, are the chairman and CEO and the top consultant, you can figure out a way to cascade this throughout the organization. However, when you start getting into what we call in the online course functional and departmental strategies, you might need more specific, more granular frameworks for what you're working on in order to get things right and get things going with certain capabilities. So does it truly cascade or not? I'll leave that up for you to decide and for you to use your own judgment to apply. But those were the limitations on the book that I could see. Third question, is the book well written or well structured? I think so. I don't remember there being a ton of repetition. Once again, this is one of these books I read years ago, so you might read it and see it a little bit differently. But I thought it flowed quite well, and it made for a pretty quick read. My first read of this was on a project, and so I needed to read it, get it kind of in my brain, digest it, and apply it pretty quickly in order to get the project done. And I don't remember having an issue with doing that or having any thoughts of just being like, oh, man, this book really drags here, or really drags there. It's a pretty good narrative and layout of these frameworks and how to use it. And I did well on that project, so I felt pretty good about it. And this really answers the fourth question too. Will this book help me if I'm new to strategy or trying to do a strategy project at work? And I would say yes. I think this is an anytime read for anyone at any career level. If anyone is sitting there and saying, hey, what should the goals of the business be? How do we know who to sell to? How are we going to sell it to them? What do we need to be able to do once we sell it to them? If you're getting questions that sound like that, this can be a good book to go to. And in fact, when people have asked me before, what's a good book to learn what strategy is, I point them to this book because I know that it's going to be readable, digestible, and laid out with all the right cautions and warnings and ethos in the book. And of course, that's going to spoil the recommendation, but no hesitation here, read it. Just go ahead and get it and read it. It's a good read. It's going to help you. I hope everyone checks it out. And I hope that when you do check it out, that you come back and talk to us about it and leave some comments and some questions or maybe some corrections to this review in the comments below, whether you find this on YouTube or LinkedIn, so that we can have a little bit of an interaction point. But there's nothing to belabor here. It's a easy read. Just go ahead and knock it out. And that's it for the book review. Please comment below or get in contact with us in some way if you want to make suggestions on other books that we should read. It does not have to be a strategy book. It will just be a no on the first question of our critical review, but we'll give you an honest strategic take on it either way and let you know what we think. And of course, if you like the way that we talk about strategy and business psychology and are looking to make the decisions that will move your business forward and get you unstuck from the problems that you're facing, then head over to StratThink.co. At StratThink.co, you can check out all of our offerings. We offer online courses that are self-led and partnered. We offer a bunch of different types of workshops, and we offer the traditional classical project-based consulting and individual consulting. All of our solutions are bespoke and designed to move you forward. head over to StratThink.co where you can purchase the online courses, or fill out the contact form, or reach out to us via the admin email, or reach out to us on LinkedIn, or any way that you know how to get in contact with us. We'd love to talk to you and set up an engagement. Until then, thank you for watching this book review, and I wish you nothing but the best.